Hey guys, Woods Farm here. Back up at Lake Superior Coastal Trail. This is our second year and we're heading in from Gargantua Bay. And this year our plan is to head straight south, right back to the main visitor center. We're figuring it's about 50 kilometers, but we're going to track it on my Garmin Instinct GPS watch, and we'll get some accurate measurements between the campsites, and we'll go from there. So at about 1.3 kilometers, you start to move away from the beach and you start to travel up, and there's the first big climb. And if memory serves correct, this is pretty intense, goes for quite a while. And then you're gonna come out and there's a lookout up near the top. So far we've climbed about 40 meters, about 120 feet. There's a series of switchbacks that get you up to this high ridge, and you can start to see down and see the lake, and you can see the coastline. And I want to say that is the beach area that's probably just to the north of the parking lot. There's actually a series of campsites along that beach there. Okay, so we're at about 35 minutes and we've done 1.75 kilometers, and we've come up about 60 meters overall. And we're up on this lookout. It's kind of the first really good view as you head towards Rhyolite Cove. So we're at about 2.2 kilometers and we kind of finally get to the top of the ridge, and we're more out in the open. And at this point we've gone up about 75 meters. I'd say this is the first really spectacular lookout, very memorable. Distinctly remember it from last year. But you can just see how vast Lake Superior is. So this bald face of rock, we're at about 2.45 kilometers. Okay, so we're out on another lookout. We've dropped down a little bit. We're a little closer to the water level, and the wind's definitely picked up off the lake. And we came up over 100 meters, but it seems like for the last kilometer or so we've probably been kind of slowly going downward. Okay, so we're at about 3.5 kilometers, and this is where the trail starts getting difficult. You start coming closer to the shoreline where it gets rocky, and it's also very difficult to navigate. The trail markers, the little blue diamonds, are few and far between, and you do have to look ahead and look for the little rock cairns, and just be cautious you don't go too far off the path. This exact area is a spot where we got a little turned around last year, and I believe there's some more cairns that have been set up, and they're definitely leading you down towards the water. So don't be shy to go down towards the water. There's a really crazy, nasty ravine here, and I think you need to go down towards the shoreline to get around it. Just past some hikers, and you can see the terrain that you have to go through. These sections of trail that come down onto the actual shoreline are very difficult. There's an example of what you need to walk through and navigate your way through. And then as soon as you make it down to the shoreline, you're usually right back up and going through stuff like this. Okay, we're at 4 kilometers and we're just kind of back in the forest, and it's actually a bit of a relief when you get into the woods and off the rocks, but it is still pretty rugged, and we're about an hour and 50 minutes in. And then down. So we're at 4.27 kilometers, and it's just over 2 hours. The trail had us go right down to the water line, and now we're back in the forest and we're gonna make our way back up. So we're at 4.7 kilometers, and you come up off the coastline and you come onto this ancient kind of beach, and it's just kind of high up rock flat. Okay, so we just got to Rhyolite Cove. It took us 3.5 hours, and it was 6.45 kilometers. Okay, so talking about Rhyolite Cove, it's 6.5 kilometers to get here from the parking area at Gargantua Bay, and it took us 3.5 hours. You can probably do it in a little less time, but the terrain is very difficult. It starts off right away with a really steep climb, and then for about the next 4 kilometers, you're looking at like in and out of the forest with these kind of steep, rugged climbs, and then you're going out onto the shoreline where it's just these jagged rocks, and it's really difficult to navigate. So it's pretty slow going. If you're used to hiking at like 5 kilometers an hour, forget it. So keep that in mind when you're planning your trip. I will say the last couple kilometers are the easiest. You're mostly in the forest, and it's a little gradual, and the terrain's a little more forgiving. So the closer you get, the easier it gets. So that's a good little thing to keep in mind. Okay, so it's the next day, day 2. We're leaving Rhyolite Cove and we're heading to Beatty Cove. I have it on the map measured out at about 7 kilometers, but like yesterday, I expect it's going to be longer, probably more like 8 or 9, somewhere in that range. So we got a nice early start. It's just after 8 o'clock, and it's going to give us tons of time to get there. So just of interest, just 5 minutes past Rhyolite Cove, there's a little bivvy site on the beach. It wouldn't be the most comfortable place to spend the night, but there's a little fire pit, there's actually a little bench, and there is a flat spot for a small tent. So if you were in a pinch and you were behind schedule, this is a place where you could stop and spend the night, especially if you were in an emergency or something. Okay, we're at about 1.3 kilometers south of Rhyolite, and there is a spot here where it gets tricky. The cairns and the trail markers are a little confusing. There is a trail in the woods, and I'm looking out across this kind of bouldery beach, and there's a cairn out there. So we're not sure if you're supposed to stay in the woods and then cut over, but right in front of me, obviously people have been going through here as well, kind of straight towards it. Okay, so we're at Mermaid Lagoon. Took us about 1 hour and 15 minutes, about 2 kilometers, maybe a little more, to get here from Rhyolite Cove. And we're going to continue on. There's no one camping here. It's kind of a nice little secluded inlet, and there's a bear, a food storage box here, and one campsite. But it looks like a little bit further down the beach, there's another kind of improvised bivvy site. Okay, so there's an offshoot trail that goes up to a lookout. I suggest leaving your backpacks at the bottom and then climbing up, and you get a really awesome view of the lake and the shoreline further down to the south. Okay, we just finished a pretty steep climb. All said and done, it was about 80 meters of elevation gain, and now we're making our way down the other side, and we're gonna lose some elevation here. One of the cool things is how different some of the beaches look, both in the color of the stone or the sand and the consistency or the size of the rocks. There's a lot of variation, and it's kind of interesting. Okay, we're at campsite number 1 of Buckshot Creek, and it was 5.3 kilometers to get here from Rhyolite Cove. So at 6.27 kilometers, we've hit the second 2 sites in the cluster associated with Buckshot Creek. There's a little section where you have to go up the creek, and then you cross a wooden footbridge, and then you come back out onto this beach, and there's 2 sites here. And this is actually one of the spots where we stayed at last year. Okay, this is the last campsite in the series around Buckshot Creek, and we're just a little bit over 7 kilometers to get to this one. And this one, it's a single site, it's kind of private. The beach is actually a little nicer than maybe the previous 2 sites. It'd definitely be a little more forgiving for swimming. The pebbles are just a little finer and easier to walk on. Of course, it's also a single site, so there's a little more privacy. Okay, so we're at Beatty Cove. It was 8.75 kilometers to get here from Rhyolite Cove, and it took us about 5 hours. This is a really long beach, and the sites are really well spaced out. The 2 in the middle are kind of close together, so that would be good if you were going to be in like a large group maybe. Okay, this is it, Beatty Cove. This is an amazing sand beach. It's a big crescent shape, and you can see on the far side, that's where the campsite is.